all that said, last year we had a panel on social media use. We had a number of our colleagues who came up and talked about how they use it effectively. And this year, as we talked about, what is the next, what should we do about social media this year, the conversation turned around sort of big data, or how do we make sense of all the stuff? What does a share mean? What if we get 6,000 likes? What do we do with all this stuff? What does it all mean? And so we have a panel of folks who are very good with all of this, and I will let them introduce themselves, starting to my right.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Brown. I'm the president and co-founder of Riot, which is an advertising agency that does so much more. So we really focus on brand strategy, and with that comes how to execute against that. So everything from social, digital, video, print, everything under the sun, down to your website and how you kind of get people around. So, Mikala, go next.
My name is Mikala Rempe. I'm a publicist at a boutique PR agency, actually right here in the neighborhood, called Roth Associates. We specialize in anything in the hospitality field, restaurants, hotels, special events, anything like that. But we will do traditional media strategy, social media work, brand development, anything under the sun too. It's kind of a catch-all.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I work at a media agency. We buy and plan media, so we're on the paid side of it. I'm a digital media strategist, so I'm kind of behind the scenes with Facebook and Instagram and other social platforms, working on pulling the levers and gears for paid campaigns. So we don't do everything under the sun. My counterparts are pretty specific, but we do a lot of different stuff from traditional media to what I do in digital. But it's all paid.
So we have, I think everyone out here has some exposure to it, varying levels of, we talked about earlier today, maybe a whole staff person devoted to it, maybe someone who does it a little bit when he or she can. So considering that there's all been some exposure, one of the questions we had here was, what do you do to get started? I think everyone in here has started a little bit, so what are they, people who are already, have something built up, something they're happy with, how do they take it to the next level? How do you continue it? How do you expand it? What are some strategies there?
Yeah, so what we ask our clients basically from the start is, why do you want to do social media? I think it's a pretty silly question, but a lot of the times we come up with clients that say, we want to do social media, and we ask them why, and they don't know, but they say it's buzzy and it's hot, and so we need to do it. And a lot of the times, I'm sure as you guys know, budgets can be constrained, and so we really want to know the goals to why. And the reason is because we're going to be asking the questions of, who do you want to reach, why do you want to reach them, and what action do you want them to perform. There's the immediate action, let's say of downloading a app or clicking to a website to look at a brochure. And then there's the long-term action of, do we want them to take a tour? Do we want them to download a enrolled document? And so we can track those in the long form, and so you have those immediate engagements, and then you have the long form engagements. But the point being there is that when we talk to our client, you need to have an understanding of the reach. Who are you going after? What does this person look like? And what do you want to say to them to have a certain action performed? I can let Jessica speak to what are you saying to them and how do you say it, because I think she'll have better knowledge on that.
Absolutely. So I think what's really important in kind of getting started is really understanding who your audience is. That's kind of number one. And absolutely.
So if I had to ask a show of hands, if you could, in a sentence, say who your audience is, who knows, who has it in your head, who your audience is?
That's good, but I see a lot of sort of maybe.
I think it depends for some of this.
Yeah. So just making a bunch of assumptions, you probably have many different audiences you're trying to speak to. Parents, teachers, potential faculty, current faculty, even kind of sponsors or corporate partners. So the thing that you need to keep in mind is that you don't need every single thing you put out there to speak to every single group, but you do need to make sure that you are hitting each group. The key really is quality over quantity. Don't just post. I mean, as Sam was saying, people are like, I don't know, we have to be on Pinterest, right? No, you don't have to be on Pinterest. It goes back to your goals and what you have to offer. So in addition to just kind of who your ideal audience is, having an understanding of who's actually following you and being engaged with you. A lot of times we find that there's an assumption about who you're speaking to, but when you actually look at who's following, it doesn't match up. So understanding your audiences, and then I think the second piece of that is understanding the content that you can provide. So it's not about just throwing out your information out there, like, look at me, we're great. So it's social media, it's a two-way conversation. So understanding what content streams make the most sense for each of your different audiences. It's not always about asking, but providing people with that better connection, that deeper connection to who you guys are as an institution, an organization. So understanding the different content streams that you can provide, whether that's great things your students are doing now, great things your alumni are doing, are there people on your faculty or staff that can provide insight into certain topics? So when there is something happening in the news, you can go to that person and be like, hey, this thing with NASA just happened, can you provide some input into that? So you're creating relevant content. So understanding your audience and understanding your kind of content streams are really important, and being able to put those together in some sort of matrix to say, okay, here are the types of content pieces that will hit these audiences versus these audiences, planning out what you can say when, and then also leaving room for flexibility for when those topics of conversation happen organically.
Usually the first question that I walk my clients through is, what do you have to offer, who do you want to give it to, and how do you want to give it to them? Because it really forces you to get serious about intentionality before you start posting. A lot of times clients will come to me and be like, we have this, and this, and we want to tell everyone, and we want to get it out here, and I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of work that we have to do before we start pressing that post button. And I really encourage people that in order to be online well, you have to already be online well. You need to be online, you need to be reading what people are watching, you need to be a part of the conversations that are already happening in your community, in your university, in your sectors. You need to kind of know what people are saying and how you fit into the conversation. So a lot of work goes into curating who you're following, the hashtags that you're following, the digital world that you want to exist in is a party, and you kind of need to introduce yourself and know who's in the room before you start conversations.
That's a good metaphor. I've often thought that sometimes I just go out and I'll tweet or put something out there that it's the equivalent of a few three were standing around at a cocktail party, and I just walked up and I was like, "Here's my conference," without understanding the tone of things, and some of us just don't have the time to be constantly following the hashtags or seeing the conversations that are going on. So how does it all translate though to the bottom line? And some of us, the deans or our bosses, some of them, we talked about first bell, they just want the exposure. They want to see, a number. But what does that mean? How do we make sense of it, and how do we justify giving it time and energy and resources?
So the short answer is, I can't say, if you put $1,000 into social, you'll get 10,000 back. There's no concrete number, which we all are like, I thought we were going to get some magic, equation here. But, as Mikala was saying, social media is a long game. You need to invest in having robust content out there consistently. Again, quality over quantity. There's nothing that says you have to post something every day, but make sure that what you're posting is something that is going to be engaging to someone. So in terms of the bottom line, it really comes down to a couple of different things. One is, it is a time commitment. Not everyone has the time or money resources to have someone dedicated to social media 24 hours a day. It's just not possible. But it is about starting with little steps, making sure that you are not just putting things out there, but monitoring what people are saying and making sure that you have some resources, whether it's dedicating an hour of your day every day to kind of look out there. So there's that, time resource. On the other side, there's the money resource, and there's two ways that you can look at it from a money perspective, or at least concrete green dollars, as we like to call that. So a lot of times people will hire an outside agency to help them basically set the tone, kind of figuring out what that matrix looks like, setting that strategy, figuring out what are the consistent content streams that we can be putting out there, how do we schedule that, and even kind of how we distribute the work in terms of creating the content for those content streams, getting people outside of your particular department involved. On the other money side of things, it's also about promoting posts and doing paid advertising. So that gets you out of just the people who are currently following you and starting to expand your audience. The great thing about social media is you can get so super specific in targeting exactly the type of people that you want to talk to and making sure that you have content going specifically to them. So making sure that you have some sort of budget to go beyond just, typically it's alumni or students who are currently following your page, but being able to target at the broader spectrum, a broader topic, things like that. So as part of your overall marketing budget, there should definitely be a chunk of this that is for social media, both in terms of time resources as well as putting something paid out there to expand your network. We like to refer to it as an amplification effect. If you have something really awesome that you're putting out in the world and people are engaging with it, they're now sharing it with their networks, and automatically your dollars spent are going far beyond what the original intent was. So making sure that you have some budget to be able to do that.
So I was going to talk about a little bit about the paid side of it, because a lot of that would have to do with posting on your feed or to your audience. From a paid perspective, when we talk about the bottom line, we're going to be wanting to make sure that what we're sending out there in terms of budget, reaching these people, is in harmony with the return that you might get. So a lot of the times I'll have clients that say, okay, well, we want to reach 18 to 25, let's say in Manhattan. And when I come up with a budget for them based on the inventory available, the number of eyes that can see it, that's going to be a huge number of people. And perhaps for selling registrations to a conference, that might be a good return for them. Even though it's going to cost $10,000 to do it, they might be raking in thousands of dollars per registration, so it makes sense. But when we're talking about selling for another client of mine, maybe burritos in Manhattan, you're not really getting that same return on investment. So we're always assessing whether we need to scale back the audience, change the audience. And that goes back to a little earlier when we're saying, who do you want to reach? Because a lot of times there's multiple people that you want to reach in different buckets of groups. So sometimes you might say, right now we don't have the budget to do this group over here, but we do have the budget to reach this niche group, and the return on that will be strong. So that's something that we're always looking at when we're assessing the bottom line of what will we get back for what we're putting out there. And I think that's really important to always be thinking about constantly, and just kind of not stopping just when you press go, but to be consistently optimizing and looking at that, and saying, okay, how much do we get back from this? Do we want to shift focus? Do we want to change the target a little bit? So yeah, that's what I would.
And I think, as a PR professional, a lot of times I'm in the business of stress management for the bottom line. And sometimes I think ownership when it comes to social media can be the most important thing. If you're in a group or a community where a bunch of people all think that they need to do it, but no one wants to own it, so everyone's trying a little bit, you cannot have a cohesive voice, and it's impossible to make the moves that you want to in reaching the people that you want to reach. So I really like what Jessica said about, designating someone, be it an outside agency to help you, or someone on your team who you have budgeted time for, who can own your voice and be an expert in who your digital brand is, or maybe someone's not necessarily an expert yet, but you can empower them to get that way and encourage them to own those channels, because the less people all trying to make one voice, the easier it'll be to achieve the goals that you want.
So ROI is hard, but gauging success generally, I think, what are some ideas on that? So I know at our annual conference several years ago, we started some some things around social media. We have a trivia contest, we have a steps contest, all using hashtag. We have like a find our executive director and take a selfie with him, and you want a gift card for the first 5 people who do that. And it's nice and fun, and it creates some excitement, and we certainly see an uptick. But you know, besides all that, what's the point? Is that successful, or just, you know, broadly speaking, you know, other examples?
I can kind of start and walk us through just the brief background analytics that every business account has for free. And I think is usually the easiest place to get my clients started to have a conversation. So be it your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, you all have access to who your followers are, what their demographic is, and how your posts are doing. And you can choose to target your information better on goals that you want to reach on each of those numbers. So there are your followers, which is public information that everyone can see, and those are people who have made an active choice to keep up with what you're doing. And then you have your, across platforms, your interactions. These will be a combination of people that have clicked on your website or have chosen to go visit your profile after following you, who have gone that extra step to get more information in what you're doing. And then your discovery, which is usually a combination of your reach and your impressions. Reach is the number of people that have eyeballs on your posts at any unique account or viewer. And then impressions is the number of times that they're seeing those posts. So I think getting clear about, especially if you have reports that you need to file or to prove to people the numbers and goals that you're meeting in order to get better budgets, to make bigger moves with these numbers in the future, I think it's clear to at least know where you're starting, and then you can know where to go from there. And you also can look into, on most of your profiles, the type of people that are already following you. So what gender they identify with, what age range they might be. You can even on Instagram get as specific as knowing that the people that follow you are most active on Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock. And you can target your, if you're doing organic social, you can target your post to go live at that time in order to hit kids who might be leaving a certain class at a certain time or getting out of the library at a certain time, and use those tools to your best advantage if you're not able to be working in a paid digital platform.
Yeah, I think I would add there, of course, what you were mentioning, it's always good to, we're looking at who is our audience, who's engaging with the post. I think one of the ones particularly that resonates for us is what time of day are people clicking on these ads, because you have the option to post at certain hours. So we usually won't post, from midnight to 6 a.m. because it's kind of like the night owl time of night, and I don't know what kind of valuable interaction you're getting at that time. So we'll be posting, just during the day. But if we were to find out that people were mostly clicking and engaging or, doing the desired action between 4 and 7 p.m., you could just run it then. So you're saving some funds. So yes, I agree with that. But from a paid perspective on our end, we're not looking at like the typical likes, follows, and shares. We're more looking, again, behind the scenes stuff. Are people engaging with it? Are they clicking through to the site or clicking through to your Facebook page, whatever we've set the desired goal as? And we're also looking at something interesting to look at is the frequency of messaging to our audience. So as Mikala mentioned, you have the impressions and then you have the reach. So the impressions, how many times the ad was put out there, and the reach is how many unique eyes saw it. So sometimes when we run a campaign, we'll find that most of our targets saw the ad, in this line item 10 times, whereas another one maybe 22 times. So we're saying, okay, that's a high frequency of message. So next time around, because it's not a perfect science with budgeting, etc., you'll say, okay, that we didn't need that much money for that line item. The audience saw it too many times. So that's one of the metrics we're looking at behind the scenes, which I think is pretty valuable. Another one we're looking at is conversions. Conversions are pretty tough to set up in social because there's a lot of pixelating and stuff like that. But ultimately, if you can set them up or have a team that can do that, then you'll have a view into maybe somebody clicked on an ad and then left, but later they might have actually done the conversion you were interested in them doing. They might have clicked through, saw some information, and then later downloaded a brochure or went through a tour, signing up, something like that. So we're looking at conversions a lot. And again, always looking at, how many people are we reaching? And do we see that return, you know, is that amount of people that we're reaching, clicking through, or are we just yelling to a room and nobody's answering? So those are the kind of stuff we're looking at.
I think the great thing, especially with social media, is you have instant feedback. So you can test whether things are working at certain times of the day or different creative messages. You know, we run promoted posts or paid social ads where, you know, we're kind of tracking them along the way and realize, hey, we're running two very different messages to the same group, and message A is way outperforming. Let's put everything towards message A. So, you know, it really does depend on the, you know, back to the goals that you're trying to accomplish and being able to see those concrete results. The other thing to keep in mind, especially with organic, is that you can, you know, it's not just about the likes and shares, but that gives you a general idea of what is working for your audience. So one of the things that we are typically looking at is not just, you know, likes and shares for specific posts, but looking at the difference between the posts. So for example, you know, putting a content piece out there that's maybe something that's going on at your school. Maybe it's an article that was published about something happening at school. Likes and shares for that, really great. On the other hand, if you were to do a donation campaign, for example, and have a link to then go to donate, seeing those link clicks, and then on the other side of things, seeing, okay, so X number of people actually clicked on the link, and then once they got to your site, who actually filled out the donation form, and who hit submit, and seeing if there's any sort of disconnect. You know, we see that a lot with the kind of campaigns that we do as well. Are people, if there's a ton of people clicking on your ad or your post, then they get to your website and immediately bounce, that means actually something's wrong with the website. In that, you know, it could be the functionality, but typically it's that what they were expecting to get to isn't matching what they saw in the ad. So sometimes we'll see that where the ad is talking about something very specific, and then someone's being dropped just on the homepage, and they're like, I don't even know where to go from here. So, you know, making sure that you have your website analytics and your social analytics working together is really helpful to understand the path that people are taking and what works for them.
So there's, you know, one opportunity is to hire an outside company, like all of you. And some of the stuff you're talking about is more just, you know, I hear some of the stuff, I'm like, wow, that's neat, that would take me so long. And, you know, some of us are a Keith. By the way, I'm just going to use the word Keith for a single person office. That's just a Keith from here on out. Is Keith still here? He's missing my joke. All right, so if you're just a Keith, no, seriously, thinking about budgeting, what is a reasonable amount to budget for a social media campaign? Whether that's just my time, some person's time, hiring somebody, and I know it's going to vary, so give us some ideas.
So yes, it varies so much. I'm trying to think of a specific example. So one of the things that kind of back into that we often try to do is say, okay, let's say you're trying to do an alumni donation campaign. And oftentimes there's the goal, we want to raise $10 million for this campaign. What we can do, both from a paid perspective as well as an organic perspective, is look at your current audience, who's currently following you, the potential kind of donors and people out there who aren't necessarily following you but would be interested in this, and see what that world audience looks like. And that's how we start to, you know, as Sam was saying, start looking at, okay, if there is a universe of 10,000 people out there who could potentially donate to this, using a variety of methods, what is it going to cost to not just hit those people once, but multiple times? Because most people, if you actually track kind of the usage of people out in the world and what they're being hit with, they'll say, oh yeah, I just saw this thing for the first time ever. And if you look back in their pretend brain history, it's actually the fourth or fifth time they've seen it. So making sure you're hitting people multiple times in multiple ways, kind of following them around the internet, is always helpful. So that's where we start to look at numbers in terms of, okay, what is your end goal and what makes sense based on how expensive it will be to target those people to kind of back into a particular budget. So that's how we typically kind of back into that.
Yeah, exactly. So, we'll first come up with a target. We can talk a bit about targeting. But so once we figure out who our target is going to be, my team likes to set up a dummy campaign. Let's go with Facebook and Instagram. So what you can do is you can actually follow the steps of setting up a campaign. You don't have to know your budget. You don't have to know an exact time frame. Just pretend to set up a campaign. The first step there is to pick your goal. Are you going to have people click through the site, view a video, download an app, whatever your goal is? Click that through, and then the next pane you'll see will be all of the targeting available and a time frame. So you can, put in age 18 to 25, the geography, interests, and then the time frame, and we'll go over targeting. But basically, once you've set up the entire campaign, all of these social platforms usually, it's changing every day, but usually they'll put up an inventory availability on the side. It will, spin a little bit, and every time you add something new in, it will spin again and it will show you a number. That's the way that we like to come up with budgeting for our clients instead of our client coming to us and saying we have $5,000 and it's earmarked for social. Where did you come up with that number? Did you pull it out of the sky? I mean, we should have some sort of reason why we're spending those dollars. So once we have an inventory, let's say there's 10,000 people there that are available, you'll want to, just like with any traditional media, which I'm sure not everybody has experience with, but you'll take a share of voice of it. You don't need to buy every single eye that's out there that's available. And so usually we'll say, okay, 15 to 20% of that audience. Let's get those people. Now, of course, there's going to be caveats when there's 100 million people. You can only get like 2%, 1%, or something like that. Or there might only be 1,000 people, and then you buy the whole lot of eyes. But yeah, so once you have the share of voice that you're okay with, you can back that out using a cost per 1,000 impressions. So digital media is bought this way. It's bought by how many 1,000 impressions you're purchasing. So for Facebook, we like to use $8 as our CPM. That's just based on a lot of articles that I've read online, and what we see in the industry is the average baseline video is a bit higher, but for just display on Facebook or Instagram, $8, Twitter, $8. So we'll use that. So say you found out that you're going to have 1,000 eyes, so for one day. So then by $8 CPM, it's $8 a day. So it's a little complicated. You can call me, ask me, whatever you like. But that's the idea, is to see the inventory first and then back it out from there. And that will give you an actual educated budget versus just picking a number. And we just wanted to show our clients that it's important to actually know the number of people you might want to reach and the cost to reach them versus just arbitrarily picking budgets. So that's my little spiel.
I think these ladies pretty well covered how to financially budget for these things, but I can speak a little to budgeting the time for social. I think it's something that it's so easy to deprioritize because we all have 10, 12, 14 other things that are on the to-do list besides social. And I think if you want to make a real commitment to having a digitized brand online that you're proud of, you just have to make one decision to make social be a part of everything that your company, your organization, your school, your department does. Social should have a seat at every big conversation at every table, be it an actual person in the room who's in charge of social or just thinking about ingratiating them into the other parts of what you do. Maybe you have a professor who was just on, a CNN boring style talk show. You should be thinking about how to promote that on, your traditional press releases, but also how to loop that conversation into social. How to announce your new classes for the fall or spring semester onto social. You should always be asking in big decision-making conversations, how are we sharing this on social? Does this belong on social? If you really want to commit to it, it should always have a seat at the table.
So my last question before we get some questions from them, and we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but some of us have some content that might be a little dry, or we have to be creative with how we get it shared. Can you give us an example of someone you worked with where you had something that was maybe a little but it really took off, or there was a creative approach to it, or something was exciting?
Yes. So this happens in every single industry, no matter companies, big and small, organizations, everyone, and it comes down to not shouting out information that you think is relevant and it really isn't to most of the people you're talking to. So I had a client that wanted to post a link on social media to their 150-page white paper, and spoiler alert, that is not the place to do it. So basically what it came down to was, okay, let's split up this white paper thinking about your different audiences. So yes, there are some people out in the world that would love to read your 150-page white paper. But let's start by taking out some key insight and a great nugget to tease the white paper that they can, yes, go link off to. But for everyone else in the world, let's take out some key insights. Let's create, some infographics or create a compelling image that will capture people's attention and then lead them into maybe something they hadn't really thought of before, and that you can explain it a little bit more. The key with social media is, two things to really keep in mind. One is, think about how you guys use social media. You are probably doing something else, whether it's watching TV, waiting for your kid's soccer game to finally end, whatever it may be, and you're just scrolling until something catches your eye and then you stop. So you want to make sure that your content is something that will capture their eye. The second thing is again, whether it's a 150-page white paper or 3 paragraphs of something, that's not what social media is for. It's for quick hits that you can then push people to other places. So, one of the things that you should just be keeping in mind is you can have all of the content in the world, but it's really about how you package it up and making sure that you're thinking about the package that it comes in and not just pushing that information out. Think about your audience. What is not just relevant for them, but might create more of an emotional connection with your school or your organization by making it more relevant to them, talking directly to them. Again, it's social media, it's a two-way conversation. The other thing that you can do, which is, actually we did this with the white paper too, is using hashtags and things. You can follow other people's conversations and find places to relevantly insert what you have to say too. So if there's a relevant topic going on about an article that was just published, or something that some professors are working on in your labs or whatever it may be, kind of inserting yourself into those conversations, like, hey, have you seen what we're doing over here? This is really exciting. Or going in and, again, bringing other people from other departments into the conversation, asking them about how you might respond to something that someone else is saying on social media.
I would say, just be aware of all the conversations that are happening, online or not. I've encouraged clients before to just set up Google alerts for things that are somewhat related to the work that they do. And I had a client who did that, they're a client that does a lot of policy work, and they were selling a policy that was somewhat unsexy, people might say. And their policy came up on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, and they were like, how do we get involved with this? I was like, just tweet it out. Like, let people know the things about you that are cool. Like, all of you are proud of the work that you do, and it's fine to share that work in a real, authentic way that you're proud about. And authenticity is really engaging on social. So I would just say, own who you are. Don't reach and fall flat, because there's nothing worse than that on social. And get really involved with a competitive set, be it other people in your industry, or an example that I use a lot is look at how all of the current presidential candidates are interacting on social, and just pay attention and look at what they're doing. Some of them are doing great, and some of them are doing not great, and it's really easy to see the difference between the two, and it can just help you hone what your truth is on social, I think.
Yeah, and then I guess I would just say, we mentioned it earlier, but don't let, from a paid perspective, don't let creative be an afterthought. We tell this to our clients all the time. These two trains should be running in tandem. When you start talking about building out a campaign, start talking about the creative that speaks to it. A lot of the times we'll have clients that have the budget in mind, the target in mind, when they want to press go, and we ask them about the creative, and they're like, oh, we'll have to look, we'll grab something. And we're like, well, it should speak to all of us. It should all be built at the same time, and we should be having collaborative conversations about the type of campaign. And again, like nice pictures, great graphics, bright colors, things like that, things that catch attention. When people see a lot of ads online, and especially from this paid perspective, it needs to be sexy, it needs to be good looking, it needs to be bright, and it needs, a lot of attention grabbing things in it. So it's easy for me with my main client. One of mine is a burrito company, so I mean, nachos sells. But some of the other stuff we work with, like banking clients, is not as fun, but bright colors can grab attention. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Can we get some questions from the audience?
From the University of South Florida. I work with a lot of organic posts, and as you all said earlier, using organic posting to share faculty research, to share when faculty are featured in the news, and looking at impressions, reach, likes, and shares to see what works well for students, alumni, and faculty. But when it comes to paying for social media content to drive any of those audiences to take a specific action seems like a really tricky topic. It seems like there's like dozens of different factors that play into the success of your campaign, and I've heard a bunch of horror stories about people spending, say, $3,000 on a campaign and to just drive website traffic, and that didn't even work. So I was wondering, where do you start with learning what you don't know, I guess, like kind of teaching yourself how to become proficient and making informed decisions with paid social content?
Yeah, I think the best part about paid, I work across many digital platforms. I'm a digital strategist, so let's go ahead and gamut of anything digital. And so we run into a lot of the times with paid, especially like display or video or Hulu ads. There's minimums that you have to spend: $10,000, $25,000. I mean, they're pretty crazy. But with social, you have the autonomy to do it yourself and to create your own budgets. So my best practice for people just starting out is just to start small, do little tests. Make sure you have that audience in mind when you're building it out. Make sure you have a targeting set. There's many options for targeting on social. There's geography down to zip codes or congressional levels. There's demographics. There's interests and behaviors, household incomes, families. So begin by just kind of looking through everything that's available. Like, educate yourself by just throwing yourself kind of into the fire, so to speak. A lot of people get scared to even open up the make a campaign thing. You can cancel it any second. You can stop it whenever you want. You don't even have to press submit. So, just get familiar with the tools available in there, and then say, you know what, we could spend $3,000 on it, but maybe let's just spend $100 for a couple of days or a month, and see how this goes, and just kind of get a feel for it. And then if you don't like what's happening, if you're like, there's nothing, there's no action, you can always press pause at any time. Facebook or Instagram or any other platform is going to punish you for stopping a campaign. I mean, a lot of things happen, so you can just pause or stop. And the other thing is, while it is nice to do these short campaigns where you test it out, I would say that you really want to try, if you have the guts, to do like 3 months, because a lot of times you want to kind of gain traction, that frequency we're talking about. Someone, you might have shown them your ad 10 times, but they might have only realized they saw it 1 time ago. So you'll want them to keep seeing the ad, keep reaching that same audience, and then have them become familiar. And then take action. I mean, I think that in here, a lot of what you guys are trying to get people to do is a big decision. I mean, it's not just ordering takeout. So we find that with one of our conference groups, that those are big ticket items. So it might take them 3-4 times. Sometimes we have to send them to the website over and over again. And sometimes we'll have people that begin to set up a form and then drop off and then don't finish the form. And so when we have to run a different digital campaign, say, hey, come back, fill out the form. You know, it takes more than once. So again, starting with small budgets, you can do short just to kind of test the waters immediately, just get your feet wet, see how it goes, see what metrics you can learn to read before you go all in. But when you go in for that second test, that one that you really want to try out, I would try to do at least 3 months.
Thank you.
I 100% second all of that. I would also add making sure that you understand your goal going into it. If you're talking about increasing enrollment for next year, doing a 1-week campaign at $100 isn't going to show you any results. You know, it's something that you need to make sure that you're matching your goal with whatever you're testing.
Hi, I'm Kelly Gray with the University of Akron. I'm curious about what insight you have about the media habits and behavior and interest specifically for Generation Z, which is an audience that I know a lot of us in this room are really trying to reach.
Do you have 3 hours?
So, I mean, we can look at all different types of different targeting. I mean, the targeting within the platform is endless between all of them. The only thing that we brought into recently, I guess, with Facebook, Instagram, and affiliated products is the data security. So we can't really go after any offline behaviors or any behaviors that take place away from these platforms or platforms that are partners to their company. It's just kind of a workaround. But it used to be that before you could just go after like Amex purchases, or that these young people, like, you know, watch a bunch of a certain TV show that you get from the data that's coming out of their TV. Like you used to be able to buy all that, and you can still do that with display or video or anything else. But Facebook coming under fire with data security laws and all that, it makes it a little bit more difficult. Aside from that though, young people, which I think is ASEE people, right? Yeah. Sorry, I'm not there. They put a lot of their information online. They're actually probably the easiest people to target because the social targeting that you have available is anything self-reported. And that doesn't mean that it's only the stuff that they signed up with their profile with. It's not just like their age and gender. It can sweep and crawl through your posts, things that you liked, other people's posts that you've viewed. So anything that you've engaged with or shared or liked, the algorithm starts to know you and starts to build a profile of you. So then you can go in and just say, like the other day I was looking for one and it was like binge watches Netflix. Now it doesn't know that because it was connected to your TV. It knows that because you probably liked, you know, Stranger Things online and you liked your friend's post that said they watched Netflix for 8 hours. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Again, I would say like if you can get into the platform and they have a browse button, you can actually look at all the different types of targeting available, and they come, you know, they break down after that. There's like all these subcategories. So it's interesting to see what's available, and then also obviously you can, which is nice with social because you can't do this with other digital platforms, is you can go below 18. So you can do, I think as young as 14 you can target with social, which is pretty crazy, but it's available. So, I mean, even picking a geography and setting it, you know, 14 to 17 or whatever is a easy way to go after that group. And also you can go by their education level. You can say middle school, in high school. So yeah, that's what I got.
As a consumer, it's really scary. As a marketer, it's really awesome.
It's very scary. I can tell you that I've been doing this for like 9 years now, and the more I know, the more I just want to like plunge into the background and not touch anything or say anything through an Alexa or anything like that. Yeah.
Hi, I'm from, my name is Catherine and I'm from the University of California, Riverside. Can you talk a little bit about how to organically optimize your newsfeed exposure, like on Facebook, and kind of work the algorithms? Because I know certain posts might not get as much exposure on certain timelines if they're more wordy, or, you know, the algorithms for Facebook are always changing. So can you speak a little bit about that?
So from the organic side, again, I think of like social media as a party, and like you need to know who's in the room, and like if you want to be popular online, you have to take the steps to be popular. So like follow community organizations that are in your school, have conversations with them, know what's going on, you know, in your university, you know, like posts about your local school winning a sports game or something if the university shares it. Just like be a part of the conversation and be visible in organic ways. If there is, you know, when I think about when I ran like social media accounts for media groups in school, like if there's a school-wide tradition or something that happens on a certain day, like be a part of those conversations, just be there. Don't be afraid to interact. Like you're a part of that physical community in the real world. There's no reason that you can't be a part of that community digitally too. And, you know, I think Instagram really makes it easy for you to continue to do that. So say you want to follow, you know, your school library, your school health center, the College of Arts and Sciences. When you follow someone, look at that pull down bar and see who else they recommend that you follow. Oh, you'll think, oh yeah, I should follow the volleyball team or the rowing group or the student newspaper. Like just do the like digital work of building friendship essentially.
So the other thing to keep in mind from a creative perspective is that so Facebook and Instagram have the famous 80-20 rule, which if any of you have dealt with this, so any image that you post has to be less than 20% words, which also includes your logo. It's not a normal 20% of, oh yes, it's absolutely 20%. They actually have this horrible grid system that constantly changes for the worse, where they have their predetermined grid pop up over your image and you have to click what boxes touch. So even if the beginning of your logo touches this much of one of the boxes, that's a whole box. So the least amount of words on an image helps the algorithm bump you up. However, when you're posting an image, you should have some sort of identifying, whether it's some sort of watermark or your logo or something, because if the post gets separated from the image, you want to show that that is something you guys own. So keeping copy short and sweet in the post itself, and where the kind of evergreen content and building your engagement, building people who are liking and sharing and following you guys, that's where you get points in the algorithm scale. The more engagement you have as a brand or as a post, the more you win points on the algorithm. So that's where consistently posting content, seeing what content is actually resonating with people will help you in the long term.
Yeah, and also you're looking for that 20%, just to check your own work. You can just type into Google like the 20% overlay Facebook, and they have the little tool that you just drop your image in. So, because they actually a lot of the times like they don't pull your image down, they just punish you by not showing it to people. So we run into that all the time. They'll be like, your campaign would do better if it had less words. Good luck. And so then it just won't show to people. So it's good to use the tool. And then just to add on to what Mikala was saying, that it's just like when you go into a cocktail party, you might feel like you're the only one that you wish that you could talk to people, and it turns out that everybody else in the room is just trying to also find somebody to talk to. So when you follow people, then they follow you back, and then you're building this kind of global unit of people that are similar and sharing content with each other. And the more that you guys kind of grow, the more that the system rewards you by disseminating content. Now, I'm not like super good at all that stuff, they are, but I do know that to be true. So.
I'm Marissa McDade from Ohio University. We're fortunate enough to have some student interns who can help us out. I was wondering if you had any advice as far as the appropriate level to involve them in the process, because I think we're still at a point, you probably realize that a lot of people think social media is really just a young person's thing, or they don't really see it as this important reputation management tool. So it's important that I give these students experience and show them like the scheduling tools and things, but I'm also afraid of someone's like nighttime shenanigans ending up on our Instagram. So if you have any advice there, that would be great.
So the number one thing I always recommend is having a social media guidelines document, especially if multiple people are touching this. And what that document needs to outline is who you are not. How you talk about things, we say this, we don't say that. When it comes to, especially if they are not just posting content, but being a community manager in terms of engaging with people, responding to people. There are certain things that, you should absolutely ignore, and there are other things that you need to make sure you have the right way to address it, especially if it's a negative comment. So basically sitting down and kind of outlining the rules of engagement and what people can and can't say, even getting down to use this word, not that word. And this is kind of the level that we're speaking of. Figuring out what the school's personality is. Are you a Ryan Reynolds or are you a George Clooney? Really literally having those types of examples of, what would George do, when you're responding. I love him.
So as a PR professional that works a lot of times with bars or restaurants or places where there are alcohol, I'm like panicking internally thinking about this, and the way that we've kind of needing that, help from interns, and it being something that a lot of times they're more skilled at or know more things about than some of the other people in the room. We really love employing some kind of scheduling platform, so be it a Hootsuite or a TweetDeck, and there are free versions of a lot of those things, where you can sit down and give them, a document of information and say, I want you to create content for me starting, say you give it to them on a Monday, and say, start scheduling content that will go live on Wednesday. And then you can sit down, see everything that they've done, exactly how it will post live, and then you can look at it and approve and deny along the way. The one warning, or, that I'll give you about that is social, especially using a platform like that, cannot be a set it and forget it kind of situation. You have to make sure, I tell my clients, it may be annoying, but set yourself an alarm right before every tweet or Instagram or whatever Facebook post is supposed to go live, because a lot can happen in 12 hours between scheduling and it going live. And unfortunately, a lot of bad things could happen in the 12 hours between scheduling and going live, and you would hate for your post to publish at a time when there may be a tragedy or something in your community, so you want to be sure that you're aware of what's going on at the time. But yeah, those systems have helped a lot.
Yeah, I would just say, just keeping in mind to not be tone deaf. If there's a tragedy and, an intern's like, I'm just going to do my job and post this, you should speak to them. I think the one thing to talk to interns about is that they're not required, or I don't think that you should require them to be doing this after hours, because there is a flick of a switch that changes your account from being the business side to being the private side, and an intern who's had 3 margaritas could very well forget that they haven't switched it back to their own platform and post like, out getting wild with my friends on your account. And I've seen it. So I would say that just be sure that they are very aware that they are to be posting after hours, and that I'm sure they'll be gracious to know that. And then also that they should be considering, what's going on in the world before posting anything. Like, give them that small autonomy to say, maybe right now isn't the time to post about this fun thing when there's just been a tragedy. I think those are 2 very important tools to use, just to avoid like catastrophe. But otherwise, it's kind of just, you need the interns and you kind of have to just trust them a bit.
We have one more question over here.
For those of us in the little tiny shops, what's the best way to
kind of take content and change it across channels. Because I've got an intern doing social media and she's paid, but she'll just take like a snippet and post it across everything, across all the channels. So Twitter, she'll just condense it for Twitter. And then Instagram, it'll have a picture with, you know, and then kind of Instagram and Facebook tend to kind of be the same thing. And I'm wondering, is that okay or is it not okay? Because I've seen some schools that sort of do like the beautiful photo Instagram thing and there's really not much content other than what Instagram originally was for. Has it changed or do we need to worry about that anymore?
Well, I think it's very different between organic and paid. From a paid perspective, typically when we set up a Facebook and Instagram campaign, it's on the same platform. And so we'll usually set it up to have the same image and the same text. I think that usually keeping in mind Instagram ahead of Facebook because you want it to be picture friendly and beautiful because that's usually what you're seeing. And then Facebook, I mean, it can benefit from a picture and small text. I think keeping things short and concise and having a beautiful picture is better than lots of text and an okay image. So for those two things, I would say, yeah, having them about the same is fine. You can set it up so that you have Instagram as one line item and Facebook as another, but then you're breaking out budgets and it becomes messy. As far as doing the same across other platforms, I think other platforms speak differently. So Twitter is a different animal than Instagram, and let's say Pinterest is another animal as well, and then you've got Snapchat, LinkedIn, you know, they're all different animals. But I think Facebook and Instagram live in the same kind of sphere.
I don't think, so the short answer is, it's not wrong to have the same thing on every platform, but it goes back to the types of audiences on those platforms. You know, for taking the example Sam was talking about, Instagram might be more targeted towards students. You know, I don't know what who your followers are on each thing, versus LinkedIn might be more towards, you know, prospective and current faculty, things like that. So being mindful of the different platforms and who your main targets are for each of those. Also taking into consideration how people are using each of the individual platforms. Twitter nowadays, although it's constantly changing, it really depends on who you're following, is more about kind of quick hitting news and updates and things like that, versus Facebook, where you can get a little bit more into different kind of personalities and a larger range of things, people using it for news as well as more fun things, although it used to just be all about fun. So, you know, it really, the short answer is it depends. But the best way to do it is understanding who each of your audiences are in each of those things, or even as you're coming up with your social media guidelines, saying we want to be this on each one, or do we want the same information throughout?
Thank you very much. We get a round of applause.